I'm a writer, I'm a writer. I'm feeling really good. I still have moments where I'm like, I'm not sure I like this very much. Leave the work alone and read it later. I don't know if it's like good. I was reading 16-year-old Rachel's writing and I was like, this is so good. It is officially August 2nd and Camp NaNoWriMo is over, but after a month of planning that went really successfully, I should say, I am ready to get back on the drafting train. If you're new to my channel, I've been writing an adult contemporary fantasy novel called Seventh Virtue for about a year and a bit. This is my first time writing fantasy. If you don't know anything about Seventh Virtue and you'd like to learn about the project, I will link a video where I explained the entire thing in the description. Drafting is going pretty well with Seventh Virtue. 2 days ago, I was able to write 1,000 words. It was the last day of camp and I was able to end off the day with a good drafting session of a scene that I'd been working on since May. Seventh Virtue I've been working on and off. When I'm in school, so for 8 months, I don't really work on my own projects. I don't have time to work on my books. I'm mostly working on like critiques for school or like my stories that I need to hand in, or poems, because I also do a poetry stream. I started it in May, and from I think May to August, I wrote 40,000 words. Since then, I've written an additional 22,000 words, and I really wanted to get to 100,000 words by the end of August. That's not gonna happen because I didn't foresee me taking Camp NaNoWriMo not to draft. I'd still, however, like to see if I could get as close as possible to 80,000 words because, I'm at 62. I could definitely get to 70 if I keep up the work by the end of the week. And then maybe I could get to 80,000. I don't know. I just need to show you the most exciting thing that I have seen in a really long time. My issue of the new quarterly came out. I didn't know that it dropped, so if you didn't know, my short story, Slaughter the Animal, which is one of my favorite short stories that I've ever written, it was picked up in the new quarterly and it's actually come out. It gets even better. They put an accepted my story on the back. Like, what? This is Slaughter the Animal. Oh my god, look. Oh, I'm so excited. It looks so great. You can buy a print issue. I will link it in the description. So how did writing go? Yesterday it was pretty good. My dog is barking. I'm so sorry. Luna, you know what? She's old. We'll just forgive her. I did 3 sprints yesterday, just in an hour. I did 20-minute sprints each. 20 minutes is like my sweet spot for writing sprints because I'm not panicking that I'm like, I'm not going fast enough or something. 3 sprints, all of them I had relatively similar output. This is the first time I've been drafting in quite some time, really. And I wrote, I don't know how many words, like 2,400 words or so yesterday. The scenes were fun. There's drama. There's pining. Harrison is kind of a little bit out of it in this scene because the scene before then, him and Reeve have kind of gotten like attacked and he doesn't really know what's going on. So he's a little bit disoriented in the scene that I was writing. But Darren is there, who is, Reeve's love interest perhaps. And Reeve is also there. There's a lot of drama. I've been planning a video about how I wrote feeding habits, and to do that, I've been watching my old writing vlogs. And of course, when I'm watching these vlogs, I get to see the thought process of me when I was 18 and where I kind of was at emotionally when it came to my writing and sort of in terms of my confidence. So I guess I never realized how much I've actually developed as a writer since I started writing feeding habits. I made the whole video about like 11 things I learned after finishing my 11th novel, and I kind of wish I had watched some of these clips beforehand because it really put into perspective how much I'd grown as a writer, like sitting here watching this poor little 18-year-old be so sad about her writing, and like there was no confidence, and like I felt that like if I wasn't happy with my prose that like there must have been something wrong with my writing or whatever. So if you're going through something like that and you're watching this video, this is kind of like a sign almost. Like if you're feeling like that right now, in a couple of years, for me 2 years, you're probably not going to feel like that anymore. And, getting better at writing just takes time and it takes development. I struggle to sort of remember my personal struggles with writing. And I kind of want to hear your thoughts on this too. Like, how do you view yourself as a writer from like 2 years ago, for example? Because when I think about myself, like I've always thought I'm confident in a way. Like, and in the video about the 11 things I learned from writing feeding habits, I had talked about how all my life I knew I was a writer. I didn't need anybody to tell me that because I was like one of the only writers I knew. The only other writer I knew was my sister. And so in my high school, in my elementary school, everybody knew me as a writer. So like I didn't have to question. I know a lot of people struggle to call themselves a writer. I never have and never did because I was the only writer. So everybody knew me as the writer. But this whole time, like 2022 me, I'm just going la-di-da, believing that like, 2 years ago, I was kind of secure in my work. And in a sense, I was both secure and both insecure. I was secure in my work in that I knew that I had some sort of talent. I was getting external validation. I was just finishing up my first year. So all of my first year, I had people telling me, you're a really good writer. Like, I'm really impressed with all you've done. Like, these weren't people that I knew my whole life. These were people like in my field, my peers, my TAs, my profs, who were telling me like, wow, like I'm really impressed with you as a writer. And so I kind of had a bit of an ego, I think, when I was in first year. And that ego led to some sort of confidence in me, or I was like, oh, I'm a writer, I'm a writer, I'm feeling really good. And then the minute like I kind of finished up first year and I was no longer near that external validation and writing feeding habits, all of that drained away. Immediately I'm like, oh gosh, I can't even function anymore because writing is just not going well for me. And now looking back on that, just 2 years later, I'm like, I feel so bad for myself. Like watching those clips is kind of hard for me, honestly, because I don't even feel at all like that anymore. And it just kind of shows the development. Me from 2 years from now, like 22-year-old is just gonna look back on this clip and be like, wow, I can't believe I ever felt that way about my writing. And it's just so interesting how we develop so quickly over time. I have that on film. I have it in my blog. I have it in written form. A lot of writers maybe don't necessarily have that if you're not like a content creator. And so I think it's kind of interesting to kind of log your feelings about your writing. Maybe in a couple of years, you'll be able to look back and realize, how you were feeling, but with a bit more clarity, a little bit more knowledge or wisdom. Hey guys, so it's the next day, and yesterday I wrote 1,900 words, which was pretty nice. So I didn't get to writing until very late in the evening, like much later than I intended. It was around 10 o'clock, and I just did 2 sprints. So the first sprint, I wrote about 900 words, and then the second one, I think I wrote like a little over 800, and that totaled to be around whatever 1,900 is. That was pretty successful, I would say, in terms of, how much I ended up outputting. What I wrote is a little weird. So in Seventh Virtue, technically there's only one point of view for now. I might add in some other ones later. I don't know. Technically there's only one, and that's Harrison. But I kind of sometimes add point of view sections in Reeve's head, and it's not necessarily a head hop because she's like projecting her memories onto him so that he can see them, and then he kind of absorbs into her point of view when that happens. So it's like a, explainable head hop. I think it works the way that I have it sort of explained in the book. So I did one of those yesterday, and I don't know if it's like good. I'm a little bit nervous. Honestly, I've been writing for 8 years, and I talk about confidence and how I'm a confident writer on this channel. But to be very honest with you, I still have moments where I'm like, I'm not sure I like this very much. I think every single writer, no matter your level of confidence, is going to run into that. I talked about that in my 11 things I learned about writing feeding habits, that even confident writers aren't immune to insecurity. Even though I'm confident, I know that I'm a good writer. I was writing yesterday and I was like, this is not it. And maybe that's because I was doing some rereading of my old work, and I wanted to kind of talk about regressing and like looking at old work and thinking, maybe you were better a couple of years ago. So that leads me into my next segment, where I'm going to reach behind me and grab 2 books. And these are my books, and these are just printed personal copies. You can't buy these. Yesterday I was like, I need to figure out how to write Darren. So Darren is Reeve's love interest kind of in Seventh Virtue, kind of her ex. In Seventh Virtue, the lore is that they were dating for a very short amount of time before things kind of ended a little bit badly, because sort of on Reeve's end, like she wasn't ready to be in a relationship. Basically, I mean, Darren's a really good guy, and so we're kind of putting him back in there, and at this point in the book, he's engaged and he's kind of moving on with his life, and Reeve doesn't really know what to do with herself. And so with that, I wanted to figure out how to write Darren, and Darren shows up in this book. So if you are familiar with Fostered, you would know that it's a very long series, but I don't really talk about like the individual books all that much because I don't remember what happened in them. But this is book 5 that I'm holding. It's called Splintered, and this is the first book that Darren shows up in. Darren in this book shows up to what was called HQ. If you ever wrote dystopian, you probably had one of those, where it was like government headquarters. It's, government capital G. He shows up because he is looking for his brother. Now, he doesn't tell anybody that when he shows up, but his younger brother, who is really, really quite little when it's in this book, his brother Matthew has gone missing, and he's trying to look for him, and he's kind of heard through the grapevine about this squad of like really talented and driven individuals that are like kind of his age, aka the main characters of this book, so Foster, Reeve, Harrison, Lonan, and then the other characters, and he wants to get their help basically in finding his brother. He doesn't tell anybody that though, but that's his motive. So he does show up, I think, toward the end of this book. Now I'm not sure when, but I was reading this book and I was feeling a certain type of way about my writing now. Like, okay, I wrote this book, I think, in 2017. Yeah, I was in grade 11 when I wrote this book. And so that means I was 16, I think. I was reading 16-year-old Rachel's writing and I was like, this is so good. In terms of the genre writing style, it was really clean. The dialogue was really good. Like, I was very amazed that a 16-year-old wrote this. I mean, the beginning is probably bad, but I read like toward the end, I was flipping through. And that sort of led me into picking up book 6. This is the final book of the main series of Fostered called Rewired. Like I said, I have a video on making this cover and whatever. For book 6, Darren plays a much bigger part. The summary on the back actually is pretty much all about him. It says, Reeve is unwell, increasingly isolated after a conflict that jolts her team of allies into resentful separation. She struggles to ground herself in the new monotony of HQ life, like I said, capital G government. That is until she and Darren, an unexpected friend, uncover a harrowing truth. Foster and Lonan have been kidnapped, and only Lonan has gotten out. Together, she and her old allies must come together to find Foster, but perhaps even more difficult, learn how to trust each other again. So Darren plays a pretty big part in this book. Honestly, the summary at the back where Lonan and Foster are kidnapped together was so much better than what this stupid book turned out to be. What happened when I was writing this book is I had a writing puberty, and this relates to this book, and that's because I had this sort of shift in my writing style where like I was writing a lot more literary, and I wasn't really super interested in writing like the dystopian like genre fiction plot anymore. And so about halfway through the book, like it takes a dive towards something freaking weird. Like originally it starts off in a similar genre to this book, which is kind of like more action adventure. Like the dystopian element isn't as important in both of these books, but still there's a little bit of dystopia in this one still. But I abandoned that halfway through because I was like, I want to write literary fiction now, which is fine. It was good. I needed to go through that because I grasped my style. This is like one of the chapters, I think chapter 9 is when I really like found my writing style that sort of has followed me since then. But the difference when I was reading this book and this book were really clear to me because I felt the writing in this book, which, I'd written a year and a half, before this one, was so much better. Like it was cleaner in this one because I found that it wasn't as like try hard. There's some writing in this that is try hard. It is writing puberty. It's not fun. I was like trying to find like a descriptive style, and then some of it was just melodramatic as hell. But at this point, I had refined what was sort of like my beginning style of writing, where it was just a bit of like a cleaner style, more descriptive, very like introspective. I noticed Reeve has a lot, who's the narrator of these books, has a lot of introspective behavior here. I don't know how I wrote it this fast because I was trying to do that yesterday writing Seventh Virtue, and me, I was 16 a long freaking time ago and I'm 20 now. I'm turning 21 soon. I couldn't figure out how I did that in this book, despite differences and my writing being much, much better now. It's more similar to this one where it's a bit more, descriptive-y, flowery. It's a little less in a character's head. It's a little less immediate. And this is obviously first person present tense. Seventh Virtue's third person present tense because I love that point of view. So there is going to be a difference, but I was amazed. Anyway, so I read kind of both. Mostly I was reading Darren in this book. The ending of this book is really, really sweet. So Darren and Reeve are, friends initially when they meet in this book. At the end of the book, there's a conflict between Lonan and Harrison because why wouldn't there be? They're like fighting all the time. And this is the first book where you kind of start to get some like maybe, I don't know, more than friends, romantic tension between Lona and Harrison. And so it ends on this like really sad note. This book, like Lona is being really mean to Harrison, and Harrison's like, I'm so tired of being nice to you. Like, I do everything for you and you're mean to me. That's like basically how this book ends. So the final chapter is like Reeve needing relief. Like, the chapter is actually quite, like, it starts off really nicely. Let me read some of it. When I head outside to clear my head, Darren's waiting there for me. In my mind, at least, he's propped up against the side of the building to listen to me dispel the buzz in my brain onto his, get some perspective. In reality, he's not here for me, rather in search of the same result I seek. Relief. And I just thought that the pacing of a lot of the writing, like the way that I injected dialogue, I don't know, I liked it, and I kind of miss writing like that. But anyway, the reason I'm talking about this is because the end of this book is really sweet. Darren and his younger brother, like I said, Matthew, would stargaze a lot when, you know, because Matthew, I think in this book must be like, I don't know, 7 or something. I don't know. He's really young. Anyway, so they would stargaze together. So in this book, at the very end, the last scene is Darren and Reeve stargazing. So I was really paying attention to this because I didn't remember how Darren acts. Honestly, I'm like, how do you talk? What is your personality? Like, I know who Darren is as a person. Like, he's a level-headed guy. He's like the most normal character I've written. Like, he is a good person. He makes mistakes. He's struggling because he's trying to find his brother, and like, people are trying to help him, but his family is trying to like not get him to hyper focus on this so much. So Darren's a really good guy. I really like him as a character. He's a real sweetheart. And this is the final paragraph of Splintered. And if I can't ask for more than finding a little peace in studying the stars on a still night like this one, I can find solace in staying like this, even though the only thing I know for sure about him, which is Darren, is the sorrow he hides in his face. This moment with only Darren feels like the release I've yearned for, a place I can go when the waves of passing time and regret become too much to take. This is home. And that's the last line of this book. And that was like the energy that I needed for like my scene yesterday, because, you know, like I said, Darren's engaged by the time we get to Seventh Virtue, and he was engaged in Rewired. His fiance had ended his engagement in Rewired because he was pretty preoccupied trying to find his brother. Darren's not perfect, basically, is what I'm saying, despite him sounding perfect. And so at this point in Seventh Virtue, when the squad kind of meets back up with them, he is engaged again. They actually run in on him on his engagement party. Reeve is feeling some type of way because, you know, obviously they have no obligation to be with each other, and they don't necessarily want to be with each other. I mean, Darren's moving on and Reeve isn't really ready for a relationship yet, but they also left off on their relationship on a pretty vulnerable note. So I think seeing each other again and interacting with each other at the current part that I'm writing with in Seventh Virtue is difficult for both of them, and so trying to figure out how that works was pretty fun, which is why I was reading all the old work. But it was crazy to me to see how much my style has developed and changed, and how much of me looking back wants to be able to write like I used to. And also at the same time, I'm like, no, but I've also made leaps and bounds, because me, like, of 16-year-old 2017 Rachel would have looked at, you know, the writing I write now and been happy and like envious or something, or wanting to attain the certain things that I have now. So sometimes you're happy with where you're at, and then sometimes you're like me and you're just thinking like, how come like I can't write that way anymore? So it's really normal. I think like this is coming from somebody who I would say that I have, you know, a good amount of experience with writing. And Seventh Virtue's my 12th novel, I guess, or you could technically say it's my 13th, since She Is Also Dead, which is my short story collection, is my 12th book technically, and I'm almost done that. So Seventh Virtue, you know, I've at this point written 13 manuscripts. Despite that, you know, I still run into these issues where I like think sort of how much things have changed, and I think that's an interesting thing as a writer. Like, how do you feel about your writing changing? Is that something that, you know, you look at only with like positivity, or like I'll take any change? Let me know in the comments. Or are you somebody who doesn't really want their style to change, but more to like refine from where it is? Because my style obviously changed a lot. It didn't necessarily just refine. I would say book 5, this is my refined style from what I was trying to achieve in books 1, 2, 3, 4. But now it's changed. So today I'm just going to do some writing sprints. First thing, I'm actually already tired. Like, it's literally not even midday and I'm tired. The manuscript Seventh Virtue is actually pretty long already. It's like over 67,000 words. So I think I should be able to hit maybe around 70,000 today. I'm in the middle of a scene, which is good. That's one of my tips. Like, if you don't want to like run into writer's block and you're like a pantser, for example, one of my recommendations is to not finish an arc, for example. So if you're a pantser and you're in the middle of a scene and you know, like, okay, well, I need to stop writing right now, stop in the middle of the scene rather than finishing the chapter or the scene or whatever. And I find that's helpful because when you kind of leave off in the middle, you know where you have to go from there because the scene was kind of on a roll. But if you finish a arc and you don't really like know where to go next because you're a pantser, for example, and you don't really know what else to do, sometimes I find myself stuck in those moments. So it's just a bit easier for me if I end off in the middle of something instead. That's what I did yesterday because I was tired. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to reread the work and then I'm going to just get back into drafting immediately. Again, just some 20-minute writing sprints until I feel like not writing anymore. Okay, so I'm rereading my work, and once again, this is why I recommend, if you are feeling insecure, to leave the work alone and read it later. Because if I had sort of given into the voice last night that was saying like, oh God, this is so bad, it's nowhere near as good as what I was writing, you know, when I was 16, I would have not written at all. I'm reading this now and it's fine. Like, it's literally fine. I really like it. It's great. The pacing is fine. The details are fine. Not every single book that I'm going to write is going to be written in the exact same way. So I don't know why I'm trying to recreate something because I don't need to. I think it is not too bad. Oh, this is my laptop, by the way, with the do it scared sticker. Okay, Rachel, like, good for you, girl. You have done it. You've written something that isn't awful. We love the iconicness of Reeve. Literally one of the lines, she's talking about the first time she and Harrison met. How I've written in this book is obviously different from like canon. So Seventh Virtue is a different world. The characters are older. The circumstances in which they met each other are different. But I think it's fun because I get to make them meet each other all over again and learn to love each other all over again, which is how I canoned how Reeve and Harrison met. And Reeve and Harrison are like best friends, right? How I canoned that they met was he was going to Lonan's house and Lonan was working. And so he was like, I'm gonna go into my boyfriend's house and I'm gonna sit on his bed and I'm gonna watch Criminal Minds and America's Next Top Model reruns. That's literally what he's watching. And he brought snacks, he brought wine. He, you know, he get a little wine drunk, you know, he's chilling. Somebody enters the room and it's Reeve and she's like, who the hell are you? And they've never met before. And she's like, this is my brother's house. I'm protective of my brother. Are you, like, gonna kill us? And she's, like, very sus of him. She looks visibly upset, and Harrison is, you know, like, he's a little tipsy, so he's like, do you want to join me, basically? Because he's just watching TV and having fun and eating popcorn and drinking wine. Like, why wouldn't you want to join him? And so Reva's like, fine. And so she joins him. They both get drunk and like they just kind of start spilling secrets to each other and discussing with each other. And she's very distraught about something. They end up having a pretty good time, but the whole time like she's like holding like a knife to his side because she's never met him and she wants to like verify with Lonan like that this is actually like a real person who isn't trying to, you know, kill them. What's funny is I wrote a line yesterday where I said, she pokes a knife into his ribs, sure, but she does this with everyone. And besides, she won't hurt him. I thought that was pretty funny. There's a lot of humor in Seventh Virtue. It's kind of like a bit, funnily enough, a bit satirical. There's this line here I wrote about Humilitas, and Humilitas is the bird at the center of each family. It's immortal, and also Lonan is half Humilitas because his mother kind of morphed them together when he was a baby. Reeve and Harrison end up finding like a kind of a something in the woods about Humilitas when they're looking for him. And Harrison in his mind, he's like, had Lonan done that? Sure, murder in some instances can make someone hot, but in this instance... It's like satirical. It's kind of like making fun of itself in the narrative. Sometimes we get like snark and sometimes we get him being funny and sometimes we get him being self-deprecating. You get this like off reality, like a little bit of a satirical, maybe breaking the fourth wall kind of vibe at times in Seventh Virtue, which is really fun. I don't have that with any of my other books, so it's kind of like this hilarious thing where I can make myself laugh. I find myself laughing a lot when I read Seventh Virtue because it's funny. Reeve is describing Harrison. I want to share the line in like her point of view, and this is the line: the way his cinnamon hair flops over his forehead like he washed it with VO5 and let it air dry convinced her immediately that he wasn't a threat. Reeve, like, what is the roast and why? I mean, I love me some VO5. I love me some Suave, some Pert, some finesse. Those are like the best shampoos. Hey guys, so it's been a couple of hours and I've done a lot of writing, which was good. I've written around 2,400 words for the day and I'm just about 800 words under 70k. So my goal for the rest of the day is just to get to 70k and then I'm pretty good with that. I don't think I really need to write much more beyond that. Right now, I was able to sort of finish up like a bit of an arc, like a scene that I'd basically been working on since May. It was just like this series of events that I just needed to finish and whew, it's done. It was kind of action heavy and I used to write a lot of action scenes, right? Because, you know, if you wrote Young Adult Dystopian, you were writing like action scenes all the time. But I have become a little bit like unaware of how to go about doing that. And I'm really tempted to go back in through my old books and like just copy and paste. Because why not? It's my book. I can do what I want. Because I finished up that arc, something new is happening. Does anybody else feel uncomfortable when things start happening in your book? Like, or is it just me? Because whenever like I finish up like an arc that like kind of took me a while and like I move on to something like new, I'm like, huh, this doesn't feel right. So right now I'm like in a subplot where Foster and Harrison go to a library, which is good because we don't get a lot of Foster and Harrison time. We haven't yet because this book is, you know, really Harrison and Reeve. So Foster, obviously, though he's Harrison's best friend, like his best friend, like that's his best friend. Even though they are best friends, we haven't really gotten to see them interact all that much yet, and we're like at the 70,000 word mark. I can't, it's just hitting me now. This book is 70,000 words. This book is longer than Feeding Habits. Oh my god, Feeding Habits in total was like 60,000 words. Rewired, which is one of the books that I showed you earlier in the other clips, the last book in the Foster series, is only, I think, like 60-something thousand words. This is like the longest manuscript I've written in a long time, and it's nowhere near done. Like, we're maybe coming up close to the midpoint, but we're not even anywhere close. Like, I'm still in the middle of like the fun and games beat, and you know, it's not going to end anytime soon because Harrison, Reeve, Foster, they just got to the Peterson estate, so they don't really know anybody. Harrison doesn't really know Darren. He kind of gets to know Darren a little bit, and Darren has kind of proposed something to him that would make them have to spend more time together. So, you know, there's going to be more getting to know of everybody. But yeah, nobody really knows each other all that well. I just want to kind of get into the scene with Foster and Harrison screwing around in a library because it'll be fun. They kind of break in and they're not supposed to. It's the Petersons have a library on their estate. Darren loves books. Actually, this is reminding me that I'm basically like calling back to something that happens in book 6. So Rewired, which I was showing you before, Darren actually creates his own library where they're living. I'm gonna see if I can do one writing sprint and get me to 70,000 words, and then I think I'm gonna call it quits. So I didn't do writing sprints actually today. I spent most of the like sort of earlier afternoon rereading what I'd written yesterday, and I was editing it kind of as I went because there's just some things I wanted to add, and then from there I would just kind of naturally finish the scene, so it didn't make sense to do a writing sprint. And then I wrote this whole bit with Foster and Harrison kind of having, you know, positive masculinity moment. I'm happy for them. 1,500 words. This did not feel like it took me 1,500 words to write. This feels like a page, but I realize it's like 5 pages. So yeah, okay, I did a lot more than I thought. I did get to name chapters 10, 11, and 12. So I do name my chapters. I just find it fun. It brings me joy. So chapter 1 is Play Again, 2 is Memory Palace, and we have Hang Dry, Fear 4, Entry Point / Old Friend. I'm not sure which one I want to choose. Maybe Entry Point. Wax Figure, Fever Dream, Close Friend, Blood Relative, New Game, and Safe Sacrifice. So chapter 10 is New Game. Chapter 11 is Safe Sacrifice. And a lot of these titles are just titles that have been on my list that I'm like happy to just like kind of take off and use. So yeah, I'm just gonna do like one 20-minute writing sprint and tell you how that goes. I thought I had 800 words to write. I have less than 200 words to write because the document's at 69,816 words. So, to share a fun excerpt before I get into writing, this is Harrison at the library. Though Darren offered to teach him to use his magic, he figures the Petersons must have access to helpful books or guides or something instructional. How to use your magic that your ex-boyfriend gave you in an attempt to save your life, even though it's created a target on your back, even though that's also the reason why he gave it to you in the first place, because his family is totally trying to kill you for dummies, if you will. Harrison. Ever since I did the NaNoWriMo stuff, drafting this book has been a freaking breeze. In Camp Nano, what I wanted to do was basically understand the magic system, and I didn't realize how much not knowing what the magic system was and not knowing how it worked was stressing me out every single time I wrote this book, until I'm now writing it, understanding everything. Now I know why like I was suffering so much before. Okay, so I wrote 447 words in a 10-minute writing sprint. Like I said, I usually do 20 minutes, but I knew that I just wanted to hit 70K, and I was so close that I didn't need to write for that long, though I kind of am enjoying this, so I might like stay here for a little bit and then I will kind of move on from writing because I'm kind of in the middle of a scene. Okay, I have coffee. It's the next day. Let's talk. I am going to get my dead cat to put on this thing because there's an AC right underneath. Dead cat is the fluffy thing I put on my microphone. I can assure you I do not have a dead cat. I would not do that. So the next day, I have had kind of a slow day because I had an appointment this morning. Yesterday, I didn't do any more writing after I hit 70K. Honestly, I was kind of shocked that I hit 70K because, you know, it was my goal, but like, I think when I started the day, I was at like 67 something. So I was like, there's no possible way I could write that much. Then I forgot that this is seventh virtue and not feeding habits. And seventh virtue isn't trying to kill me. Because it's not trying to kill me. I have more energy to sort of keep writing it. Whereas feeding habits hated me and had a vendetta against me. Sarah and I, who is my twin sister, she does the podcast with me. We only have one episode right now. We're working on it, I promise. She's also my critique partner. We were talking about seventh virtue because I sent her a bunch of excerpts and we just had like a long conversation about the book and it was so fun. It really pumped me up about this project, and yesterday in general kind of calmed me down because I have been a little bit high strung and a little bit anxious about like my career and my future prospects and like, well, what if I want to write this for my career, but also I want to write this, which is the opposite, and who's going to want to represent me? And we're like, oh my gosh, like getting ahead of myself. What was helpful is Sarah told me, she was like, you know, you can't really live for like a what if, you know? You would try to make something work for where you're at right now. And I appreciated her telling me that. So I was able to kind of chill out and just focus on seventh virtue last night. Because we were doing a lot of brainstorming together, obviously, I was able to take some notes. That was pretty fun. I'm going to transfer those notes onto my computer because I am determined to keep up with this, unlike what I've always said, and I never keep up with it. The only other thing I've done today is I finished this book, Wicked Souls by Katie Whisper. So good. I started this like last week. I finished The Marionettes in one day. Like I think I read it, which is book 1 of this series, in just like 5 hours or something. It was so good. I absorbed that book, and I mentioned in my last writing blog, I'm not somebody who reads like books in like a day anymore. If you are looking to read a series that has a great sequel, this one, so good. I really enjoyed it. I finished 4 books in the last 2 weeks alone. Like, who is this person? It can't be me. But anyway, I'm now currently reading Iron Widow by Xiran Jie Zhao. I read the first chapter and it was so good. I totally forgot like why I'm so in love with genre fiction and like young adult, and I can't believe I forgot because it's just amazing and it's so fun and it's making me think of, you know, what I want to do with future projects and stuff. And anyway, my plan is not to do that much. I'm in the middle of a scene where Foster and Harrison have gone to a library, like I mentioned in the last clip, and they're being funny. Like they're bickering. It's just so fun to see them together. And I wrote the cutest, like purest, like interaction, best friend interaction with them yesterday. And I kind of want to upkeep with that. I've never really gotten to see Foster and Harrison be tender with each other. They're like best friends and obviously they're nice to each other. They love each other very, very much. But I've never seen them like hug each other all that much and like give each other little forehead kisses. And I'm like, it's so cute. So I'm gonna see if I can write more of that. Hey guys, so it's been a couple of days and I just wanted to film a quick outro to this vlog as well as a wrap up of everything that I did over the last, I think, week or so. I took a bit of a break from writing. Honestly, it wasn't purposeful. I had meant to write. I just kind of ran out of time during the day doing other things, and that's totally okay. Honestly, I had written quite a high volume of words, and sometimes when I write a high volume of words, I need a bit of a break, and I kind of unintentionally take a bit of a break. Usually it's longer than 3 days. Usually it ends up being a week. So I'm happy that I didn't end up taking a week off because I was still looking forward to writing every single day. So at the start of this vlog, I think I was around like the 61,000 word mark or so. And now the book is at 73,000 words, which is so exciting. I wrote like, I don't know, 10,000 something words over the course of this vlog, which is really exciting. Yesterday I wrote 1,100 words in Seventh Virtue, which was really good progress. I wrote like a really pure scene. I've noticed that my scenes in Seventh Virtue are much longer than my scenes in like my other books or my short stories. I think that's sort of like more natural in genre fiction, which has just been fun for me, honestly. I've been reading a lot more. I cannot believe I'm a reader again. What have you guys been working on? Let me know in the comments, but I'm gonna end this vlog here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.